Okay, my friends, and we are live once again here for another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A here on the RDP YouTube channel, helping you be fit and live free by taking a fundamental approach to diet and exercise. As always, I'm Matt Schifferle from the Red Delta Project. Today's episode is all about killing the inner perfectionist that resides within us all. Because no matter how smart you are, no matter how much you learn, no matter how motivated and driven you are, this little voice inside your head is always there telling you that the path to your success is to basically try to strive for the best type of outcome you can. You have to have the perfect diet, the perfect workout program, the perfect type of lifestyle. You got to get things really dialed in. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, but Matt, I'm not a perfectionist at all. I know that feeling. I never fancy myself much of a perfectionist. But these days, perfectionism is hiding and lurking in the shadows of other types of phrases and ways of being portrayed. And sometimes we think I'm not a perfectionist, but I search for optimization. I want the optimal diet. I want the optimal workout program. What's the optimal number of sets and reps? Or what's the optimal ab exercise? This is still perfectionism. Because what perfectionism is telling you is that the only way forward is to do things one particular way, whatever that is. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what type of program or diet you're trying to stick to. Trying to do things one way is perfectionism. Another way that it pops up is when people say things like, oh, I'm an all or nothing kind of person. Like, I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. Like, I have to jump in with both feet. So if I'm going to try and lose weight, I've got to wait until my life has the perfect setup. Like, I'm not too stressed out at my job and the kids are well behaved and I got the time and I got the motivation and I got the money and I've got all these other things. And basically the stars have to align in order for me to take action and start to try to go on this new endeavor. Again, that is perfectionism. That is basically saying this is only worthwhile if you can do it to a certain degree. And usually when we have this attitude of I'm an all or nothing person, most of the time life doesn't play ball with what our perfect plans are or what our best laid plans are. And as a result, we end up putting things on the back burner. Another way that it often resides itself is when we're thinking, okay, I want to do these things, I want to get in shape, I want to lose weight and stuff. However, I need to do my research first. I need to learn more. I need to be able to know for sure what the heck I'm trying to do. I don't want any doubt. I don't want any sort of tendency or intimidation about what I'm doing. I want to know absolutely for sure what the best thing is. And so what we end up doing is we just end up lost in paralysis by analysis because we're always trying to figure out the navigating the black holes and the rabbit holes of the internet. Or we're just saying, okay, once I know for sure, I'm going to take action. But the problem is you're never going to know for sure. It's never 100% sure thing, even under the best of circumstances. I know people who have multiple PhDs, who have studied diet and exercise their entire life, who have forgotten more about diet and exercise than I've probably will ever learn. And even they will be the first to tell you that we have a pretty good idea to know what to do, but there's always some degree of uncertainty there, which is actually a very good thing because certainty is the refuge of fools and cowards. It is a complete illusion, like perfectionism. The only person who knows 100% sure what they are doing is the person who is too ignorant of their own shortcomings and the potential pitfalls of what they are doing. So perfectionism rears its ugly head in so many different ways. And the more we strive for it, the more it holds us back. And it holds us back two different ways. The first of which is whatever metric you're using as the perfect approach, it's either reachable or unreachable. Now, if it's unreachable, then that kind of gives you an excuse to not take action. Like, well, I don't have the time and the money and the energy and the motivation to do that perfect diet or workout plan. So I'm going to put things on the back burner. I'm going to put off taking action for now and wait until my life becomes perfect enough that I can take action. So it's a way to basically make almost not so much an excuse, but to a get out of jail free card or get out of taking action card. Like, oh, I'd love to be able to get in shape, but my work is crazy right now, or the kids are going all nuts, and there's this big project at school, and I've got all these other things going on. We're hiding from it, basically. And the fact of the matter is that the only way fitness works is if we can always do it, even on our worst days, even when we're stressed and tired and injured and we have no time. We still need to make something happen, which is why the adaptive approaches that I've been talking about in the past several episodes are so key, which I'll be discussing a little bit more later on. Because the second way that perfectionism holds you back is it's static. It's locked in place. Whatever diet and exercise habits it says, okay, this is the perfect workout or the perfect diet or whatever, it's going to hold you back, because ultimately results don't come from how perfect your diet and workout program is. They don't come from how hard you work. It comes from taking whatever you're doing now and improving it over time. That's how we get results. We get results from creating a progressive delta in our programs. How is your workout or your push-ups or your technique or your diet better now than it was 3 months ago? And that should have an answer to it. It's like, oh yeah, it's definitely better because of X, Y, and Z. But when we have a perfectionist mindset, we kill off a growth mindset. Because if you can reach that star of perfectionism, whatever illusionary metric that is, like, okay, this is the perfect calisthenics workout routine that I do, you do it, and you fool yourself into thinking it's more productive than it really is, because it's static. It doesn't change. And habits that don't change don't produce progressive results. It's good for what you've got now. It helps you maintain things in a maintenance phase, but I hope you like where you're at, because you're not going anywhere. Perfectionism is a locked-in approach. It's something that doesn't evolve, and it doesn't adapt, and it doesn't change. And therefore, it can't produce long-term progress. It's going to just keep you exactly where you're at. And more importantly, lots of times a static approach means that it can often pull you out of personal alignment with your resources, your circumstances, and your preferences. So even if you had the perfect diet or the perfect workout program, your life is going to change. Your circumstances are going to change. So the ability to adhere to those perfect habits will become much more difficult in many ways. Maybe you've got a gym in your current apartment, or you're down the street or something. It's really easy for you to work out 5 days a week. And then you get a work assignment, and suddenly you're working in some remote location and there's not a gym to be had. Suddenly that perfect idea is no longer something that you can adhere to. So no matter how you slice it, this perfectionism idea, or optimization, or all or nothing, or doing things the one correct way, however you want to look at it, is ultimately going to create a lot more stress on mind, body, and lifestyle. It's going to severely hold you back and prevent you from getting the results that you want past a certain point. And it, more importantly, often discourages you from taking the action you need on a consistent basis, because why bother taking action and trying to do what you can when you can't do things perfectly all the time? So that's the spiel on how perfectionism can basically hold you back. Let's get to some questions before we start talking about strategies on how to kill the inner perfectionism. We got lots of questions and stuff coming on in here. Excuse me. Glorious saying, hey, Matt, can I send you an email and send me the ISO bow in my house if you don't need it at least for a few months? Possibly. I don't know. The shipping and stuff out here is really kind of weird. I've sent stuff to other countries and stuff, and it literally is like a 6 to 9 month thing. Yeah, send me an email. Let's talk about this. Maybe it's something we can do. I'm a big believer, not that I follow Christian teachings very much, but I do like that idea out there of, if you have 2 coats and someone has none, give him one of your coats. I've always kind of adhered to that idea, that if I have something that I'm not using that someone else can use, maybe we can make this work. Send me an email, reddeltaproject@gmail.com, as if you couldn't have guessed that. S. Lee, coming on. Hey, Matt, is a muscle up worth to master and incorporate in your training? It's a cool move, but I always get exhausted after doing them. Don't really feel my muscles working like pull-ups or dips. Very good question. For my money, it's not worth it, because the hardest part of an exercise is usually the stuff that challenges you the most. So with a muscle up, that's the transition between your pull up and your dip. Now, it can be a very efficient exercise because if you're like, I've got 5 minutes, what can I do to just work my entire upper body? Muscle up can be a good way to go about it. But what limits most people is that transition. It's not your ability to pull yourself up or push yourself above the bar. So the muscles in your push and pull chain are usually not worked to the degree as if you just did a set of pull-ups and a set of dips or push-ups or something other pushing, right? And to me, it never made a lot of sense in my mind because I've always kind of looked at my training like, how would a bodybuilder basically train? I've always looked at my calisthenics of, I just want to build muscle and strength. That's just flat out. I don't care about calisthenics skills or tricks. I just want the most efficient and effective ways to build muscle and strength. And a muscle up is a pull up basically followed by a dip. And so it'd be like if I camped out on 2 separate machines at the gym and did 1 lat pull down, and then I walked over and I did 1 dip, and then I walked over and did 1 lat pull down, and then I did 1 dip. And people there would look at me like, what are you doing? Like, that's not, you're trying to thoroughly work the muscle, or if you're trying to build it to cook the muscle. And that's not going to happen as efficiently with the muscle up. It's just not, because of that limiting factor, because most people have worse technique to it. It is a cool thing. And a lot of times, funny enough, a lot of folks find that if they just get strong enough at just regular pull-ups and dips, the muscle up just kind of happens anyway. It happens on autopilot because they are that strong at pull-ups. In fact, most of the time when you talk to people like, how do I get my first muscle up? They'll usually say, just get as strong and powerful and explosive and proficient as possible at basically doing pull-ups and then dips secondary. It's like, well, if I'm getting what I want from that, why bother with the muscle up anyway? So it's one of those things of, if the muscle up is your goal, like you've got a bet with your friends, like who can do a muscle up first or something. I had a guy at the gym one time, we had a bet to see who could get to 10 muscle ups first on the pull-up bar on the cable crossover there in the gym. And he didn't make it, but I think I got 10 at one point, and I was like, yeah, I got it. And after, I don't think I've done a single muscle up since. Because why? Why would I? You know, there's no benefit to it other than being able to do muscle ups, but I'm still improving and progressing with pull-ups and dips and building muscle and strength and stuff. So I don't need it. Why would I do it? Remember, there's only 2 good reasons to have any particular diet and exercise habit. It's either desired or required. And if it's neither of those things, there's literally no good reason to do it. Let's get to some more questions. Talaha, good to see you. Matt, started following you recently. Thank you very much. Bodybuilder guy who have pains in the shoulder blade and sleeping glutes and lats. Welcome to the club, you and everyone else. Doing really well, but there's a lot of work to be done, especially in the glutes. Yes, be patient with those sorts of things, my friend, because it does take some time to wake up sleepy muscles. And even when you do feel like you're waking them up, there's this progression of awareness of it. Like 2 years ago, I thought, oh yeah, now I'm getting my lats on. Okay, yeah, they're engaging very well. And only recently, over the past, I would say maybe 6 months or so, like, oh, now my lats are really engaging. Now I know what it's like to engage them to a higher degree. And I'm incorporating them more in things like my hanging leg raises and my bridges and things like that, and handstand work. So it's always this thing that can constantly be improved upon. And it's not something that you're ever going to be like, okay, now I've got these things fully on, they're fully engaged, and they're done. Strength and neuromuscular engagement is always kind of this balancing act between the two. The better your engagement, the stronger you get. The stronger you get, the better your engagement. The better your engagement, and it just keeps going back and forth. So for those watching, of course, the fastest way that I know of to really get a muscle to engage very well and very quickly is, of course, with isometric training. My book, Overcoming Isometrics, down below in the description, goes into much more detail with that, especially for the glutes and especially for the lats. The hinged over kickbacks, the lat pullbacks with like an iso trainer, or even just like a martial arts belt or a yoga strap or something, whatever you can find on hand, works really well at getting your lats to engage very, very quickly. And then it's not just, can you engage the muscles in that exercise, but can you engage them all the time doing other things? Because that's the ultimate litmus test. And I've always told people the best way to know if your program's really working is if you're noticing the strength and the muscle and the engagement outside of those exercises. So when people come to me and have been training them and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm climbing stairs so much stronger. Or today, I went for a bike ride. I'm like, my glutes are really firing off on when I'm climbing this hill. That's how you know you're really making progress. So it's kind of like level 1 is being able to engage the muscle isometrically. Level 2 is being able to engage it with a focused exercise, like dynamic lat pull downs or pull-ups or something. And level 3 is, do you just notice you're using that muscle all the time? Like when you open up a door or carrying groceries and stuff. That's the real trick right there. So stay on it. I guarantee you the results are more than worth it. It's one of those things that just really can transform your body and your life. Plus it makes your workouts feel so good as well. He's coming back up, listening to live podcast while bridging face orange frowning. Yep. Very good. More questions. Zarate Karate. Let me zoom out here a little bit. Sorry, folks. I'm a little bit close. That's the wrong way. There we go. Zarate Karate saying, hey, Matt, how strong have you felt ever since you incorporated isometrics into your daily workout routine? Do you feel personally many people out there miss out on them? Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's what I was just talking about. Strength is oftentimes a feeling. It's something that is kind of unmistakable. It's like sometimes people will ask me, how do I know if this is getting stronger? Or how do I know if this muscle is getting stronger? I'm like, it should be pretty damn obvious. It should be like getting a baseball bat into the shins. It's not a lot of doubt that it's happening. So when you have more strength, when you have more power, it should be extremely self-evident. And that certainly does carry over. I mean, my back is a hell of a lot more stable with leg raises, which also makes my abs work a lot harder. Things feel very different. I know a lot of times we want objective metrics and quantifications in our workouts, which oftentimes is what perfectionism preys on. Perfectionism oftentimes will say your workout is perfect or your diet is perfect if you hit these particular metrics. You're eating these many calories or getting these many grams of protein, or you do these many sets and reps and whatever, right? Whatever metric we are taught is the optimal or the best way to do things. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of progress and improvement in fitness is very much subjective. How does the exercise feel? How does the muscle feel when you're doing things? When I was on my bike ride today, I'm like, wow, this feels really different. Like my pedal strokes are a lot smoother. I'm feeling stronger. My legs are feeling stronger. I was going up Lookout Mountain today, and there were just parts of it where I was shifting down a couple gears more than normal. It's like, I'm usually in my easiest gear here, and here I can actually shift up. This is great. Now, I guess you could quantify the wattage. You could quantify the gears that I'm using and stuff. But really, does it matter? No, because it's very self-evident. I'm a lot stronger on the bike right now, and my glutes are really firing up a heck of a lot more. Do I need anything beyond that? No, of course, very self-evident, and it's a good thing to be paying attention to. Excuse me, I grab more water here. You could probably hear the ride I did today in my throat. Camille was saying, yo, Matt, I'm hesitating between exploring strength training with weights and calisthenics, which I simply enjoy. Very good. I don't see any reason to hesitate. My goal is to build muscle mass, and I'm stuck between grind, curiosity, and fun. Thoughts? Experiment, my friend. That was a slip of the tongue. Experiment. Yes. So as I was talking about subjectivity and feeling, when you're looking to build muscle and strength, you want to do things where you feel that muscle working a lot. Don't go for just rhetoric, which again, perfectionism preys upon. Rhetoric out there is the bench press is the best exercise out there, right? That's the optimal, the best, the perfect thing out there. But if you're doing bench presses with a barbell and you're thinking, the chest just really isn't lighting up that much. I don't get much of a pump. There's never soreness or anything. But you do, say, ring push-ups, and you do a set of 15 of those suckers, and your chest feels like it's going to explode, or better yet, RTO push-ups, which are, those will get your chest really fired up. What do? You listen to your body. You experiment. You do back and forth. And usually when there's something that is certainly better for you, the feedback is both clear and very immediate. Like you do a workout with the bench press and you're like, And then you go on the rings and you're like, dude, oh my gosh, my chest was so sore the next day. You listen to that type of feedback. And then you just pick and choose however you like, because fundamentally, you're basically doing the same thing either way, right? Horizontal pushing, 3 sets of 10 or what have you. So you go with whatever you're getting the most immediate feedback with. You may feel like, okay, weights for the lower body, calisthenics for the upper body, experiment. You're always constantly looking for just what's a little bit better. And again, that's where perfectionism kills you, because perfectionism says this is the best way to do something. This is the optimal way. This is the way you're supposed to do it, right? And you stop listening to your body. You stop listening to that valuable feedback that's actually guiding you to what's actually best for you, because you're following whatever dogmatic rhetoric that is out there. So by all means, mix and match. You don't have to go with one thing or another. It doesn't make any sense to, unless your goals are to be a purist of some sort, which most people, that's not their goal. If your goal is just building muscle and strength, then use whatever you find is going to be the best way to get you there and feel like you have the best chance of doing it. And it's also a comfort thing. I find a lot of people make more progress with calisthenics if they're uncomfortable with the weight. My joints, I've got a very small bone structure. I just always felt like if I was dealing with a heavy weight, that the workout was more about just dealing with the weight, not lifting it, just dealing with it. It's like, it's hard on the body, but it didn't really feel that hard on the muscle. Versus calisthenics, for me anyway, was always the opposite. It's like my muscles are getting destroyed right now, but my body feels very comfortable. my joints feel very good. So you want to be looking at things like that. What's going to make it as easy as possible to push the muscle as hard as possible? Use that as your guiding compass, my friend, and you will have your answers on what you really should be doing that's best for you. Tala, good questions coming on in. Keep them coming. Excuse me. Very flimmy on the bike ride today. Excuse me. Is saying, Matt, which muscle should we keep in mind while walking to keep awakening the glutes and quads and making it hard? You're not necessarily making it hard, my friend. When we're walking doesn't necessarily need to be a very strenuous exercise unless you're doing it particularly up a steep incline. Like here in Colorado, we got mountains. That's a very good way to work very hard. Particularly down in Castle Rock, we've got the mini incline at Philip S. Morris Park. I promise I'll do a video there someday. That sucker's going to kick anybody's butt. And then, of course, down in Manitou Springs, we've got the Manitou incline, 2,000 vertical step. It's a vertical feet of just basically railroad ties and steps. Quite the physical challenge. Again, guaranteed to kick anybody's tail. But the bottom line is being mindful of the glutes is what I would start with. My experience is if you're focusing on getting the glutes to engage, the quads automatically do. In fact, a lot of times when people have trouble engaging their quads, it's because their glutes aren't quite as engaged. I did a video on this years and years and years ago. It's probably in the archive somewhere about how if you want your more distal muscles working, get the proximal muscles like in the torso and the hips working more, because energy kind of goes out of the body. It radiates out, which I know kind of sounds bro sciencey, pseudosciency, but it's basically the way the body works. The more tension we have proximal towards the torso, the core, and the hips, the more tension we can have in our biceps, in our triceps, in our quads, and the calves, and so on. So when we're walking, I want you to focus on engaging your glutes. And actually, before you do that, practice using your glutes while standing. That's the one that is really going to get you where you need to go with this. Because if you can engage your glutes more to fully extend your hips while you're standing, you can just practice this anytime you're standing. It's a lot of practice, but if you can engage your glutes more while standing, they're going to definitely be able to engage more when you're walking, hiking, getting up out of a chair, and so on. That's the thing about muscle recruitment and engagement is, again, you want to use it all the time, not just when you are working out. Super Prime 117 saying, I get a lot of knee and hip adductor pain and tightness in the quads when sitting crisscross on the ground for long periods of time. Excuse me. What can I do to get rid of this pain? It's a very good question. I've always had issues with that. Being a martial artist, we would sit of course, cross applesauce for long periods of time. And then we'd have to get up and do some kicks and demonstrate. And I always kind of get up like an old man and stuff. It's a strength and mobility issue, though. So when we are dealing with tight muscles and stiff muscles, we're also dealing with weak muscles that have a hard time stretching out, because mobility and the ability to stretch out a muscle is heavily correlated to the strength of that muscle. So the exercise I recommend, again, this is on a YouTube video that's very old, but I should redo it again, is what I just simply call hip sweeps. And hip sweeps are where you stand on one leg, again, engaging the glutes. And when you're doing that, the other leg is locked out straight and you lift it up in front of you. It doesn't have to be very high. I've, in fact, given this exercise to people who have had hip surgery and the leg is just off the ground like a few inches. And so you take the leg and you just sweep it, or you swing it around to your back. So the toes are pointing straight up in front of you, and then you go to the side and the toes are pointing forwards, maybe a little bit downwards, and then all the way behind you and all the way back. And what that does is it works the strength of the hips, the stability of your hips, and the mobility of your hips. And that kind of is one of the best ways to just make sure you're giving your hips what they need to be in good condition. Then when you're sitting like that, or if you're sitting on the floor in any way, shape, or form, you want to be treating it as a stretch. Don't just sit there. Actively engage your hips. Drive your knees down towards the floor. Pull your feet in. Bring your torso forward. Whenever you're seated on the floor, you want to be treating it as an exercise. So engage those hips. Stretch those hips. Work on them as you're sitting. And that will hopefully over time improve the strength, stability, and mobility of those hips. And that will make it a lot more comfortable to sit and make it a little bit easier for you. Because yeah, I know it's really hard when you're seated like that for even 5-6 minutes. I used to not even be able to kneel on the ground. I couldn't kneel on the ground with my hips on my heels and be able to be there for any period of time. And then when I'd get up, I'd hobble and limp around for a while. So it's certainly possible to do. Master Dave is saying, Matt, what's your opinion driving the knees out on the squat? So it depends on where your knees habitually go. Most of the time, people have their knees either habitually go in or out. Now, I personally have my right knee habitually goes outwards due to a birth defect that happened, when I was born. And so my right knee habitually goes outwards. So I have to pull my knee inwards. So if some people, they habitually go outwards, so they have to work on pulling inwards. Some people, they collapse inwards, they have to pull outwards. It's all about building up that stability in your hips. And it is about the hips. It's not about the knees. It's all about keeping your hips tight. Because if you habitually go inwards or outwards, what that's usually saying is that your hips are not engaging properly, either your abductors or your adductors. We need both. So the common advice out there of always drive your knees outwards or whatever, that's usually advice that's given under the understanding that, most people collapse in, so we always recommend driving out, which is understandable why the advice exists, but it's kind of foolishly applied because it's basically saying this is the solution that everybody needs, regardless of whether or not it's actually a problem. So it's a common thing for the internet to do this sort of thing. But as a coach one-on-one, I've certainly told people bring your knees in, especially when it comes to progressive calisthenics, where you're doing things more on one leg. You need to have your femur slightly angled in so that your foot and your knee are traveling more along your center line. So if you're always going outwards, that's going to create quite the knee issues, as it did for me on my right side whenever I was doing lunges, pistol squats, things like that, because I was habitually going outwards, causing a lot of stress on my knee and causing quite a few problems. So it's not about, do you need to go in or out? It's what do you need to keep the knees driving over the toes? That's the important thing. So let's get back on topic here a little bit. We're talking about killing the inner perfectionist. Why does it exist? Why do we have this strong inner desire to get things perfect or optimal or as good as they can be? Well, it's down to one of the most fundamental emotional reasons why we get into fitness in the first place, which is our desire for control. Because ultimately fitness, this whole fitness thing, it's not about health. It's not about abs. It's not about how we look good without clothes on or our performance and stuff. It's about gaining more control over our health, over how good we look naked, how our performance is and stuff. We always want this control. And so the lure of perfectionism is always telling us that you'll have the control you want if you have the perfect diet or the correct workout program or all or nothing approach. You'll have that control, which is a complete lie. It's a complete, because nobody has that type of control. Fitness is governed by the fundamental laws of mother and human nature. You can't control your body any more than you can control a tidal wave. That doesn't mean you have no control. You certainly have some degree of control by influencing those fundamental processes. But the fact is that perfectionism lures us in with the lie that it can give us that control. And we feel like we have control. When we have a day where we eat perfectly clean according to whatever diet dogma we're following, when we hit that perfect workout and we get everything right, sets, reps, heart rate, everything is perfectly gone well, we have that sense of control. We have that sense of security, because we all have those inner fears of like, I don't want to get fatter. I don't want to be unattractive. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to perform badly, in the next basketball season. We all have these fears. And the more we fear it, the more the lure of perfectionism pulls us in, because it's like, oh, this is the optimal or the best way to do something. And so it placates, it pacifies that need for control to satisfy those fears, but it really doesn't. You don't have that control. You don't have control over your weight because you don't eat sugar. You don't have the ability to guarantee you have a good physique because you do a certain number of sets and reps. You don't have any guarantee that your body's going to stay healthy because you don't eat red meat or whatever, right? Whatever the rule is, it doesn't give you full control. And that's the first step in breaking out of perfectionism, is recognizing that it is a lie. Nobody has that full control. You can do everything right and still get cancer next month. I mean, hopefully not, probably not, but it can happen. There's no guarantees like that in life. You can have the optimal workout program, come back a year later and be like, my body doesn't look any different. Happens all the time, right? Same thing with diet. Same thing with whatever health regimen you have. Like, I take cold showers in the morning and I journal and I do meditation and all this. These things are fine. They're great. But do they give you full control? Absolutely not, because nobody has that full control. All we can do is take action with the things that we have at our disposal in the moment, use the resources that we have, and influence those processes to the best of our ability, or not even the best of your ability, to any ability. I went out for a bike ride today, 40 miles. We rode up Lookout Mountain. Could I have ridden longer? Absolutely. Could I have ridden faster? For sure. Could my bike setup be better? I'm sure. I've never gotten fitted for it. I just kind of put the saddle where I thought it should go, and like, I guess that feels good. There's a million ways I could have improved that. Does it matter? Not really, because I still went out with my friends. I still had a great ride. I still burned a lot of calories, and I still felt like I made some improvement on my riding technique. That's all it needs to be. That's all it has to be, is just using what you have and what you're willing to do and improving in some small way. Now, perfectionism is going to prevent all of that from happening. However, if you're just looking into more of that growth mindset and saying, yeah, this is probably a good way to do things a little bit better, we break free of that trap. Let's get to some more questions here. I love answering your questions, folks. Thank you so much for coming on. Gatsu is coming on, saying, hey, Matt, last time I said I injured my shoulder doing one arm hanging L sits. Yep, I remember that question. I probably got an inflamed bursa, still recovering, but it's definitely getting better. Glad to hear it's getting better. Starting working out seriously again. Very good, Gatsu. Always be looking at your exercises for what's the payoff to investment ratio. We always want to be looking at, I just did a video this past week about how hard work doesn't always pay off in the gym. And the fact that when we are working out, we want to be looking at what are we doing versus what's the payoff. So we want to invest our time and our energy and sometimes, yes, money and equipment and stuff, but don't just assume that harder is better. A one arm hanging L sit is really cool. It's really hard to do. But is it worthwhile? We were just talking about muscle ups. It's much harder than just doing a set of pull-ups and dips. But is it hard in alignment for the goals that you have? Is it hard for the right reasons? It's not necessarily a good thing just because it's hard. Hard work is a liability. It's something that takes from you with hopefully a potential payoff. But we want to always be very vigilant about asking ourselves, is the payoff worth it? And if it's not, it's perfectly fine to say, yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do muscle ups. I don't want to practice muscle ups. Honestly, I don't think there's a worthwhile payoff for me. That's just for me. You could have the dream of being able to do 20 muscle ups and it keeps you up at night and you've got a muscle up tattooed on your right bicep and everything. And you're like, it's, you named your dog Kip or something. Great, wonderful, go for it. We always have to kind of go along our own path according to our preferences and resources. Hey, Mariano, it's good to see you. Saying, hey, Matt, I have no question today, just sending you love and telling you that many of us in this community feel close to you in our day-to-day life. Thank you so much, Mariano. That really does make me feel very good. I appreciate that very much. It's hard to connect with people. The past couple of years or so, I've had kind of some emotional rough patches with a couple of relationship things, and it's made me really recognize the importance of personal connection. And it's hard to connect, ironically enough. We got social media and we've got things like this that I can do where I'm talking and trying to engage with you one-on-one, but it's much harder to connect with people one-on-one, which is why one of the next stages for Red Delta Project is to be able to travel and speak and actually visit you people, to go to other countries and states and say, this is where I'm going to be. Who is up for a workout? Because I want to meet all of you. I want to hang out. Let's go out. Let's do some pull-ups. Let's have a beer. Let's really connect on a deeper level. Because ultimately, I do feel like as humans, that's an extremely part of building a good quality of life. So little tangent there, but thank you very much, Mariano. Glad to always have you on the channel here. Joseph Bello, speaking of another regular, saying, hello, Matt. Is it necessary to do pull-ups to build up your upper back on shoulders, or can pike push-ups do the same thing and are rows off to build up the back? I know what you're saying there. Yeah, you don't have to do pull-ups. Absolutely. Pull-ups are very much optional. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that a lot of people are probably better off not making the pull-up the bread and butter pull chain exercise that they do. So overhead stuff, handstands, pike push-ups, overhead presses, things like that, that's a real good upper back builder. My traps have been building up because I've been getting a lot more serious about my handstand work lately. A couple people have noticed it and stuff. They put their hands on the shoulders and they're like, dude, you got the horns going on there. It's like, yeah, handstands. Handstands. If you ever, what was it? Calisthenics Kings. I don't know if they're still around. They had a YouTube channel. The gentleman who was the front man of it, I don't know his name. Sorry, if you know it, please leave it in the comments. Massive traps, impressively massive upper back. And you watch him and he's this handstand master. He does like tiger bends and all sorts of things, makes him look easy. That's not a coincidence. We use our upper back a lot with those movements. Same thing with rows. And we can modify the rows too. We can do rows with the elbows up nice and high, which kind of makes it a little bit like a fly. We can do rows with rotations, single arm rows. There's lots of ways that you can adequately work your pull chain and your back without pull-ups. So if you're feeling like, I don't know, somehow the pull-ups just aren't my thing, or you got an injury or something like that, don't worry about it. Everything in fitness is largely optional. So even though it is a bread and butter staple in the calisthenics community, if it's not in alignment for you, don't worry about it too much. You're free to do things your own way, as long as you just get the fundamental stimulus you're looking for. And you can do that in many different ways. Let's see, what else do we have? Hercules coming on. Matt, what's your favorite post-ride snack? Mine's grilled cheese and tomato soup, like Bob Roll. Oh, yeah, I remember Bob Roll. Man, he's always so funny. Him and Phil, oh my gosh, what a duo. Yeah, good question. I crave salty stuff quite a bit after a ride or skiing and stuff, because here in Colorado with that sun hitting you, I mean, you just leach out sodium like crazy. So chips, I like, is it Lay's? I think it's Lay's, the baked potato chips. That's kind of like my thing. I love those baked potato chips. I just feel like they taste so much better than regular ones. So I'll snack on those a little bit while I'm making up some actual food or dinner or something. Usually give me something with some fat and sustenance to it. I remember I went out for a long bike ride with a friend of mine one time, and afterwards he was like, let's go out and get some sushi. I was like, are you kidding me? Now, I love sushi. I went out last night and had a very high-end sushi dinner, and it was wonderful. Love my sushi. But after a hard ride, no, give me a burger and fries. Again, the saltiness and stuff there, give me something with some spice and a good caloric hit. So burger, fries, fried chicken, pizza, that sort of thing. That's what I usually like to have. And again, keeping with my 3P strategy, plant, protein, and portion control, of course, with my post-ride meals. But I know you asked about a snack, so usually that's what I'm going for. Zarati Karate saying, Matt, is it normal to feel more quad activation more than my glutes when doing the line bridge? I want to feel my glutes, but is there a better exercise you recommend? Very good question. So this is very common, particularly for individuals who are pushing a little bit too much when they're doing their bridges, meaning they're spreading the floor apart a bit. So what I would recommend is warm up with some basic line glute bridges. And the way you want to think about it is you want to pull into your heels. That's going to engage your hamstrings to a higher degree. But while you're doing that, as you drive up, you want to feel like you're kind of driving your butt into your hamstrings. I know it's a weird way of thinking about it. It's a kind of a weird cue. But when you do a hip bridge of any type, whether it's back bridge, hip bridges, reverse planks, or whatever, you want to feel like you are getting those glutes literally driving into your hamstrings because you're bringing them closer together. Also, keep your abs a little bit engaged. That helps with that pelvic tilt, which usually is the culprit in those scenarios. You have a little tiny bit maybe of an anterior pelvic tilt, and that often compromises the amount of tension in the glutes as well. So drive your glutes into your hamstrings, pull into your heels, keep your abs slightly engaged for that as well. A lot of questions coming on. Thanks, folks. A lot of people out there trying to kill their inner perfectionist, because it's always there. It's always there saying like, oh, you can optimize and you get this perfect and you're going to have the control. Like I said earlier, if you just recognize that you don't ever have that level of control, that's the first tip. Second one's coming on real quick, but let me get to some more questions here. Christabel saying, hey, Matt, good to see you again. Thank you too. What type of calisthenics is the best for a powerlifting athlete that want to change the training style for a while? So you want to basically match your movement patterns as much as possible. So overhead press with a barbell, handstands, pike push-ups, that sort of thing. Bench press, you want basic push-ups, maybe something more along the lines of like a weighted push-up or dips, so that it's a little bit more of the similar movement pattern than a progressive push-up like archers, although that can be a very good way of going about it, because exploring some of those progressive type of techniques can help you find little imbalances and weakness that may be holding you back. Any type of squatting motions that you like, so hover lunges, shrimp squats, pistol squats, that sort of thing, very good for the hip stability. And for pulling, anything that's going to work very well with the pull-ups, rows, and so on. So it's basic calisthenic stuff. I wouldn't say there's anything that's really special that you need to do. And that happens quite a lot where people will say, oh, I'm using calisthenics and I'm this kind of an athlete, or I'm looking for this goal. What do you recommend? And 9 times out of 10, it's basics, man. The basic stuff that is everywhere else. The stuff in my book of progressive and weighted calisthenics. That stuff is pretty much what I recommend. I had someone say the other day, what do I do to start on the calisthenics journey? My book, Weighted and Progressive Calisthenics. Read it, understand it. You'll have better tools than 99% of the people out there when it comes to understanding how to build real muscle and strength with bodyweight training. Again, link is down below. Shameless plug there. Let me know, folks, if you have questions on those books and resources that I recommend. Evan is saying, can you give any advice on weighted stretching? I feel like I don't get proper muscle activation during them because I don't get the evidence of of soreness. Shall I go for more repetitions? Don't worry about the soreness, so to speak. Here's what I would recommend instead. I'm not a big fan of the weighted stretching because what is going on is you're trying to make the stretch bigger through the weight. And I've always gotten far better results when instead of trying to get into a deeper stretch through external means, like if someone's pushing on my back when I'm stretching my hamstrings, or, back in the day, we used to have one of those torture devices in the martial arts gyms where you spread your legs apart and stuff. It's much more balanced, holistic, and probably safer if you work into the stretch. So if, like I was saying earlier, when we were talking about sitting and stretch, like don't just sit there, work into the stretch. Push your knees down to the floor with your hips. If you're stretching out your hamstrings, like you just say you sit down and you're trying to reach for your toes, work your abs, work your hip flexors, work your quads. If one side of you is stretching, the other side of you is working. Because again, strength and mobility are very much in a holistic synergy with one another. And a lot of times we will fail to build the stretching or the mobility we want because we don't have enough strength in the antagonistic muscle groups. But once that improves, then suddenly the body feels more comfortable and secure with having your muscles stretch more. So I'm not too well versed on weighted stretching. I don't practice it myself. I don't really know much about it, so I could be mistaken about it. But if looking at the fundamental aspect of how your neuromuscular system works, I would bet anything you're just going to get more out of working into the stretch rather than having a weight kind of forcing you into the stretch. My opinion, my thoughts. Give it a try for a couple of weeks. See if it feels a little bit better for you. Sinitar saying, hey, Matt, I try to be efficient doing the main amount of training to attain my results. Very good. Yet I keep hearing about complicated workouts, making me wonder what I'm missing. How do I filter out the noise? Very good. You're not missing anything, my friend. All right. If I take this glass and I drop it on the floor, it's going to smash. Does it matter if I'm juggling it between my hands for 30 seconds first? Right? Does it matter if I'm balancing it on my nose, with my eyes closed while singing the Star Spangled Banner or saying the alphabet backwards? No. There's a million ways we can make things more complicated without any effect whatsoever. It always boils down to what are you achieving on the fundamental level? What are you achieving for that fundamental stimulus? I just want to make my biceps bigger. Work them against resistance. Bend your elbows. I don't care how you do it. I don't care what exercise you do. I don't care what your program is. If you're just making your biceps work hard and you're progressing the amount of time and tension over time, it doesn't matter how you're doing it, okay? Just get the work done, like smashing this glass. If it hits the floor, it smashes. Doesn't matter any other variables on how it gets there. Same thing with your muscles. Just hit the damn things. Bomb the hell out of them. Think bodybuilder. Think powerlifter. Make them work hard. A lot of times the noise is just that. It's distraction. It's noise. Sometimes, yeah, there can be a little bit of a way about it, like with my grind style calisthenics program. We have a 4-stage program. You have your isometrics for muscle engagement, then you have your stability, then you have your strength phase, then you have your finisher and hypertrophy phase. So that's a way to make sure that you're improving your neuromuscular proficiency, and it's very, very effective. But does it have to be done that way? God, no. There's a pull-up bar. Grab up there. How many can you do? 8. Give me 10. All right. And you get 9. And you're like, okay, I got 9. Great. You're done. You got the job done. Just hit the damn things. Muscles are like nails. Just hit them. And if you want to make it more complicated and you try a couple little differences, see if it's doing something, go for it. But again, this is where perfectionism raises its head. There's always details that you can incorporate. There's no shortage of it. Well, what if I worked out in the morning versus the evening? What if I faced due west versus east? Can that matter? Well, yeah, if you're facing a certain way and the sun is in your eyes when you're doing pull-ups, then it's going to compromise your comfort and your ability to do pull-ups. Face the other way. But this stuff, again, is pretty obvious. If the details really matter, they should be an obvious result pretty quick. Like do your push-ups this way instead of that way. Get down on the floor. Oh, wow, that feels a lot better on my chest. That's the stuff, the feedback that you're looking for if it really does matter. 9 times out of 10, though, you're going to try it and be like, I don't really notice a difference. If you're not really noticing much of a difference, it probably doesn't create much of a difference. It's not worth really paying much attention to. So we're getting back onto perfectionism. The first step in killing it is recognizing you don't have that full control that perfectionism promises. You can have more control, sure, but you're always at the whims of some degrees of fate and luck in this whole fitness thing, because that's how life works, right? The second way that we break out of perfectionism is having much more of an intuitive and adaptive mindset, which I've been talking about at length over the past several episodes. Because when we look at our circumstances and we look at our resources and our preferences and what we have to work with, and we say, okay, according to my circumstances today, I'm going to work out this way because that's the best way for me to create that stimulus. That's the best way. So if you're like doing pull-ups for several weeks and you're like, I just don't feel it in my back, and then you do some real good hard lat rows or something on some rings and you're like, whoa, that's lighting up my back. When you make decisions about what is best for you, you're killing perfectionism because you're putting yourself in control. You're being much more disciplined. Perfectionism does not require discipline, which I know a lot of people think it does, but staying on a strict diet and workout program is not discipline, it's obedience. When someone tells you this is the way you're supposed to eat and you do it exactly like that, you're not being disciplined. That's obedience. In many cases, there's a good reason to be doing that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. However, when it comes to your overall health and well-being in the long run, you want to be more disciplined, which means you're making decisions. You're looking at your circumstances and what your body's telling you and your ability to do things and saying, you know what? According to the feedback I'm getting and my situation right now, I'm probably better off today not doing this, but instead doing this other thing. That's being disciplined. That's being intelligent. That's being independent and doing things better instead of the quote right or the correct or the perfect way. So it takes practice. It takes some degree of self-reliance. I'll give it that. So a lot of times, especially beginners, will start to adapt something of a cookie cutter plan. They'll start with, a workout they find online and a diet their friend recommends and stuff. And that's great to start off, but it's a template at best. That's all it is. It's like downloading a template for a website. It's a good framework, but you're supposed to change these things around. And I get emails all the time from people saying, I'm following this plan or that plan, and I feel like I might be better off making this change. I guarantee you're probably better off making that change because at least emotionally, your subconscious is telling you, yes, this is fine, but the feedback that you're getting is telling you X. You have resources that are changing. Your circumstances are changing. You're probably better off making that adaptation. And when you do that, you're getting more control. You're more in control of your decisions. You're being more disciplined. And you're not trying to be perfect. You're not trying to do things the right or the correct way. You're simply looking at it and saying, how do I just do this a little tiny bit better? And that's all you need for results. No one ever got results by doing things right. You get results by doing things better. You can have the most perfect diet and the perfect workout program, but if you don't get things better over time, you're going nowhere. You've got nothing to work off of. You're just sitting still. But when you look at your circumstances, you look at what you're doing, you're like, I think I might be better off with a little bit more volume for my legs or what have you. Great. Now you're more in control. Now you have a much better chance of getting the success that you want. And now you're being more disciplined. And it just takes a little bit of that experimentation and being able to say, I think I know what's best for me. And if you don't, you're going to find out real fast. If you do that and you're like, okay, that was not what's best for me. Good, listen to that too. Okay, more questions to finish off here. Leslie's saying, Matt, is focusing on volume, speaking of which, good in increasing muscle mass, like doing 200 push-ups in a session. A couple of weeks later, increasing the volume, 300 push-ups a day. So this is a bit of a myth that permeates our fitness culture because several years ago, there were a lot of studies out there talking about how it's like, okay, these people worked out with a certain amount of volume and these people worked out with more volume and the people with more volume were able to build more muscle. And so it created this story that went out to everybody saying like, okay, volume is the most important thing ever. No, it's not. Because all they did in scientific study, which you're supposed to, is like, let's take a variable, change it between two groups and see what it does. And unsurprisingly, you take a variable and say, okay, a little bit more of this or less of that created a different result. Good. It doesn't mean volume builds muscle. It just simply means that volume is an influence to building muscle. There's a million things that come into play with building muscle, many of which we have no control over. But is volume important? Yes. Is it the thing that determines results? No, of course not. Because intensity is also that other factor, because fundamentally, your ability to strengthen and condition your muscles boils down to time and intensity. And volume is just time. So, duh. It's like, is time important for building muscle? Yeah, it is, because it's one of the two fundamental variables. However, in chasing after volume, a lot of people compromise that intensity. I've certainly fallen for that idea. And again, perfectionism will tell you 200 push-ups is the perfect amount that you can do. There's nothing more persuasive and basically a con artist than our own rules that we set for ourselves. You're lying there in bed at night and you're like, I want to build muscle. I bet if I did 200 push-ups a day, that would do it. You're not basing that off of anything substantial. You're just, it sounds good. It sounds like a good thing to do. And because it's a rule you created, it's really hard to break away from that sort of rule, because that would be admitting to you, maybe you weren't 100% correct in that. It's different if I say do 200 push-ups a day and you could say, no, wait, Matt, you're a jackass. You don't know what you're talking about. You can fight against me or someone else and have the ability to think more on your own. It's much easier to do that. But when the recommendation's coming from your own mind and intuition, that's a hard one to crack. So is volume important? Absolutely. But so is intensity, and the two are inversely proportional to one another. The more you have of one, the less you have of the other. And so what you want to do is don't think too much of, is it all intensity or volume? It's both. I think it was Tom Platz, who said something like, what's better for building up your legs? Lightweight for many reps or heavy weight for low reps? And he's like, heavy weight for lots of reps. Both. You want high volume and high intensity. Well, that's not possible. Exactly. You want to be expanding your muscular work capacity. You want to tell your muscles they need to do something they couldn't do before. And the example I always give is lifting a 1 pound weight 100 times going to build muscle, or lifting a 100 pound weight once going to build muscle. The answer is neither, because you can do both of those, metaphorically speaking. What you need to do is take that 1 pound weight and probably lift it 110 times, or that 100 pound weight and lift it 5 times. You need to make your muscles do more than normal. And whatever metric you're using as a standard is just a static metric. And static metrics are, again, a reflection of perfectionism. So you want to be basically using what you can. Me personally, I'm more of an intensity guy. If you came to me and said, can you do 100 push-ups? I'm like, dear God, why would I ever do push-ups that are that easy? That'd be like asking me to get big legs just walking for 10 miles a day on a flat treadmill. It's like, volume is good, but if you're sacrificing intensity, be wary. I just addressed that one. Excusez-moi. Cristobal is saying, for progressive technique and improvement in movement, do you consider low volume and intensity per session, but more frequency is a good idea? It can be. Remember, it's about practice. If you're looking for proficiency, you want to get in a good amount of practice. And you're not going to have much practice if you have a high intensity and just burn yourself out. So the grease the groove approach and things like that. You want to have something where you're not burning yourself out as far as the muscle goes, so you can just get more volume and practice in. As long as you can keep the good technique. It doesn't do you any good to do a lot of sloppy techniques. So that's why I'm always telling people, when you're working out, train well and train as much as you can. But once your technique and your intensity starts dropping, you're done. No sense in doing more. Victor is saying, bought your book, Smart Bodyweight Training. Thank you. Thank you for the information. Appreciate the support. Thank you, Victor. Much appreciated. Esley says, plans to visit the Netherlands in the future. Oh, that sounds like a great idea. I'm certainly in for a workout session and a good talk about fitness. Well, I'll let you know if I end up in that part of the world. I really do want to travel a lot more. I want to be able to have the ability to get out a lot more. I used to travel around the world a lot when I was younger. And just now, being as an adult, I got, responsibilities, and I've got to be responsible as an adult or whatever that means and stuff. And just the ability to travel is so much less. But I figure if I get paid to do it, then I can do it more. Finally, last couple ones saying, Bergun Journey saying, hey, Matt, what do you think about ear tinnitus? Does pushing too hard during exercise cause it? It seems weird when I push myself too hard during the last reps. I tend to tense up something. So you're talking about blood pressure and things like that. Make sure you keep breathing and see, medical professionals. If tinnitus is something that you experience, especially if it's getting more frequent, there might be some underlying cause or issue that you may need to address. But yeah, you're really tightening up and you got the Valsalva maneuver going on. You do have a lot of intra-abdominal pressure, spiking up the blood pressure that could be influencing it. Make sure you keep breathing if possible. Finally, Nathan's coming on saying, have you ever seen Dairyland Strengths channel before? Nope. Can't say I have. I don't really pay attention and follow many people, to be honest with you. I spend too much of my time and energy on my own stuff. I'm honestly not very much on social media these days, just because I don't have time. To me, scrolling through Instagram and YouTube videos and stuff is like the equivalent of like just channel surfing back in the day. It's like there's nothing good on. I'm bored. I'm not doing anything productive kind of stuff. When I find myself doing that for about 5-10 minutes, I'm like, all right, that's enough of that. Let's get back to living and stuff. So go forth, my friends. Be vigilant and a warrior against that inner voice of perfectionism that's within us all. Be very diligent about recognizing it. Recognize that it is an illusion. It is trying to give you control that you can't really have. And it's trying to prevent you from having an adaptive qualities where you are changing and doing things in a disciplined way. So you're doing things the best way for you. And if you have bigger issues with this, if you're really struggling with it, again, hit me up, reddeltaproject@gmail.com. I will bid you adieu and let you enjoy your weekend. Don't forget, check out all the resources down below in the description that I was mentioning: Overcoming Isometrics, Smart Bodyweight Training, Grind Style Calisthenics. Those books are the very best information that I've got in a much more digestible format than trying to watch all of my YouTube videos or listen to my podcast. So they're much more concise and potent. And they also help to support the channel, which is always greatly appreciated. I will talk to you folks next week. Till then, be fit and live free.